Okay, well, thank you very much for everyone who's been registered to attend today on our topic of agency search consultants' advice for new business. My name's Dave Curry, as I mentioned earlier, and on today's panel we have two extremely well-respected agency search consultants in the space, Russell Woolworth of External View Consulting and Lorraine Lockhart of ICG Consulting, who have both generously made themselves available today to talk a little bit about their role in the industry, provide some advice for agency new business, and most importantly, I think for many on this call, provide a platform to ask questions. Some of the simple questions like, what does an agency search consultant do? Quite often I find that in the consulting work that we do with agencies in helping them grow, that there's a lot of misinformation in the marketplace about the role and function of agency search consultants today. What it has been in the past, how it's changed, and where the role and function of agency search consultants will be in the future. So we do a lot of work, and I've had a great relationship over the years with both Russell and Lorraine. So really excited to be able to moderate this panel with you both, and welcome you to the call today. Lorraine, I'd like to start with you first and inviting you to share a little bit about yourself and your practice, and then we'll hand it over to Russell for the same.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave, for the introduction and, of course, the opportunity to participate in the webinar today. And greetings to my friend Russell, who I have had the pleasure of knowing a long time and respect very much. I also wanted to start with a quick shout-out to the people that I may know on the agency registration list we received. I recognize many names and agencies. And, of course, I appreciate the opportunity to get to know those of you listening that are new to me. And Russell and I are still working through the information the list forwarded to us and visiting your sites and links. So I thank you for sending that along. For those who don't know me, I guess my own elevator speech would be that I practiced 25 years ago. Rojek Consulting, or RCG, provides strategic counsel to client marketers on advertising agency selection and advertising industry issues. We also do a fair amount of consulting at the CMO and CEO level on internal to company marketing, organizational design, and resource issues. My industry perspective today is informed by this consulting work, and that includes a diversity of clients ranging from mega advertisers and complex organizations like a UPS, General Motors, State Farm, Universal Orlando, Henkel, to B2B advertisers, as well as some retailers, QSR restaurants, nonprofits, even community hospitals and startups and real estate developers. I like to say that search consultants operate in an interesting space because we stand at the crossroads of clients seeking agency resources and agencies seeking clients. So it does provide people like Russell and me a wide industry view of the marketplace, and I think that's the value that we can provide to listeners today in answering your questions the best we can. Before I turn it over to Russell, I guess I would be remiss in not mentioning what differentiates our practice, because that is often what we ask agencies to do when introducing themselves. So what differentiates me personally and the Rojek Consulting practice is that we have a lot of passion and deep subject expertise and data on the importance of understanding organizational culture and core value systems and how to best use this perspective in identifying optimal agency resources for our clients, and then post-agency selection using an understanding of organizational culture to build and integrate teams that work well together. So Dave asked us to mention a little bit what we're working on presently in 2015. So like you all, we sign NDAs, and often clients hire us to get pretty far along in the review process without a lot of exposure. So I'll have to speak in generalities, but we are currently working on 3 national retail store brand assignments, a joint venture between a university and a nonprofit institute, a project focused on the bridal market, which is very interesting, and we may be doing something within the food service industry by early summer. So Dave asked for a brief introduction. I don't want to take up too much more time, but if you want more information on my background, I would direct you to my LinkedIn profile, and there's a lot of information about how we work with agencies on our company website, which is rcgconsulting.com. With that, I'll turn it over to Russell.
Thanks so much, Lorraine. And
Thank
Russell.
you. Thanks, Lorraine. And also I just want to send a shout out to you. Lorraine is one of those people, sometimes you meet, it's just a kindred spirit, and we've gotten along very well for a number of years. And just so everybody understands, I think for the most part, most of us search consultants are friendly with one another. There's some that hold themselves apart, but for the most part, it's an interesting community, and it's great where I can call in a favor or something like that. So let me tell you just a little bit about myself and our business. I've now entering my 16th year of doing this. I started out, I was a principal at Select Resources. I was there for about 7 years and started another company called ARC Advisors and struck out on my own, starting External View about 4 years or so ago. And my life has changed radically. When I first started doing this, I did 100% searches. Today, search is about 40% of our activity. And I think we're reflecting what's going on in the marketing world. We spend more time trying to prevent clients from doing searches than we do trying to, as I laughingly refer to, preside over divorces. We have 4 major areas in our business. One is agency search and selection. We do a lot of financial work and contract work. We're doing that work all over the world. Perhaps our biggest and most growing area is agency evaluations, where we use some very cool cloud-based software and help clients and agencies understand how to work together. And I've taken to calling myself the Dr. Phil of marketing. The other thing we do a lot of work with is helping clients understand and restructure their agency rosters for a very different and changing world. So while we still do a fair amount of searches, between 10 and 15 every year, it's no longer our core activity. I refer to it, some of you in the audience may not like that, but we refer to it to our clients as marketing agency supplier management. We just see this as a very complex web of interactions that aren't always solved by firing your agency. And a lot of it is looking at marketers' own performance and how they work with agencies. And in terms of what we've been doing recently, like Lorraine, we signed a lot of NDAs. We just finished a big global media review for Brown-Forman, one of I think the 3rd or 4th largest spirits brand in the world. We're involved in multiple evaluations for multi-billion-dollar brands. Some of these are on a global basis. We're doing 2 or 3 large financial projects, and we do have 2 or 3 smaller searches going on in the U.S., one in shopper marketing, one digital, and I can't remember what the 3rd one is. So that sort of sums it up as to who I am and what I do. Dave?
Thank you very much, both of you guys. I mean, great introductions. Clearly there's a distinction between the different types of work that drive your respective consulting practices. Lorraine, you mentioned quite in the last couple of points that you made in terms of the types of work that you're engaged in the project side, and more sort of areas of middle market as well as national brands. And Russell, you noted a couple of areas in working with some of those larger assignments on a global level. So certainly, just like an agency, you guys have different clients with different needs. And from my perspective, it's sort of being a non-biased third party in this little world, it's really interesting to see the similarities between a search consulting firm like yourselves and a marketing services agency in terms of the professional services that you provide and the different scope and types of clients. On to today's little bit of housekeeping for the audience. Thank you again, to reiterate Lorraine's point, in terms of those of you who updated your agency profiles that are provided to both consultants, and obviously as well the opportunity to submit those questions. So we'll weave in a bunch of those questions in the time ahead. We're also going to provide opportunity for live Q&A throughout. So just as those of you who haven't been as part of one of our live webcast panels previously, on the menu bar you have which runs this session for you, there is a little icon, a little area for you guys to type questions. So I'll be accepting questions throughout. I highly encourage you to ask the questions as we go through this session. I will not name names, so you can feel that you're anonymous if you like, or if you'd like me to state who's asking the question, please just say so. So it's a really good opportunity to get those juicy questions in now, rather than perhaps in a meeting or during a pitch doing your research for a particular client. I'll be making a recording of this session available, as well as the promise that was made in the invitation here is that Lorraine and Russell have generously provided the opportunity to provide one of you lucky agency business development teams a piece of their very valuable consulting time, providing you with a new business POV from their perspective. So a very valuable little reward there that we'll be making they'll be making a decision on post-event. So my advice to you guys as an audience is to participate and get your name and visibility up. Moderator panel approach, very straightforward, and we're going to get started right now. So I think, in terms of the modules that we're going to run today, the first here, I think you did a great job, guys, of giving a little bit of a perspective, setting the stage here. Lorraine, I'll direct the first question to you. How many agency search consultants are there out there, and could you talk a little bit about, briefly, some of the differences between them? I think we've heard the differences between perhaps yours and Russell's, but any other models out there that you're aware of that the audience should know about?
Okay, sounds good. I guess if I started by saying there were too many, that wouldn't seem very nice, would it? So, but I'm just kidding. There can be a lot, or there can perceive to be a lot of, quote, agency search consultants as a niche. They range from groups that are more established with infrastructure and proprietary process and track records and history and reputation to a collection of people that may even include retired ad execs who advise clients on how to select agencies and obviously lean towards ones that they have worked with previously, or they sit on a review committee. So it's challenging, and I empathize with agencies because there is not a singular view of what qualifies a person necessarily to be an agency search consultant. They vary by business model, and they vary by scope of work and the ways that they're engaged by clients. Some advise clients on strategic issues. Others deliver very defined processes that allow client organizations to efficiently move through agency reviews in the market. Others are more tactical in producing lists, long lists, if you will, for RFP distribution. Others coach agencies on speculative work assignments that are presented to clients. So it's a very how much you want me to go deep, but to get an understanding of that range, I think, well, actually the list on their blog site publishes a list of agency search consultants, as is the 4 A's, and there's probably maybe 50 to 60 names on that. Anyone who's interested in understanding the dynamic around it probably needs to spend time sorting that list and prioritizing, visiting the websites of the search consultants in their regional geography, or those that may line up with experience in the same verticals that the agencies are targeting themselves.
I think that's great advice, Lorraine. I think it sort of certainly begs the question to many on this call with such diversification in the types of work that consultants do, and becoming even more diversified than just search, to Russell's point. Russell, would you mind spending a little bit of time on just going through the basics of how does it all work? Who do you work for, and I guess a couple of examples of the deliverables, including how you guys are compensated or paid?
Okay, and I'll confine this to our agency search practice, and we're terrible marketers, by the way, despite spending the first part of my career in marketing, and we work pretty much by word of mouth, but typically we don't do a lot of prospecting, which is, I know, the opposite of what you guys do, and it seems to be working for us because we seem to be at capacity a lot, but typically a marketer will contact us, and probably in 60 to 70% of the instances, we will be involved in an RFP process where we will be put up against other search consultants, where we will bid, and it's on process and things like that. And there are a couple different financial models you should be aware of out there. We charge a one all-encompassing project fee. And, based on what the process is. There are consultants out there who actually charge back-end fees. If you win a piece of business, you owe them money. I'm not going to make a value call on that. The 4A's doesn't look favorably on that. So you should know when you talk to a search consultant, you should understand the financial model, that they use, because you could end up owing them a fair amount of money. And at the end of the day, clients, typical search processes probably take around 3 months or so. There's expedited processes, and these days I think marketers are so different in what they're looking for. We're seeing this big cleavage between project work and, typical AOR work, that the processes tend to be all over the board. But bottom line, marketers hire us, then we go out and find people. We don't have a roster of agencies. People ask how you get on our roster. Our roster includes the 100,000 marketing agencies in the U.S. We take credentials and capabilities that the client requests in our discovery process, and then we look to see who meets them. And philosophically, we like to start with a small list. Otherwise, I'm not sure the value that we add if we're bringing 30 agencies forward.
Lorraine, are you seeing the same type of thing in terms of how you're structured as a consultancy as well?
Generally, yes. I think we're similar to External View in that our compensation is from the client community that engages us. We also work mostly on a quoted project fee. It's funny, it's a first-hand experience in working with a client's procurement group, because that's often who we are hired by, and we go through hurdles similar to agencies. So we work to define our scope of work and our deliverables. We provide estimates based on what the key drivers of cost in an agency review for us would be, and those include the number of client participants, the number of agencies they may want to take a look at, the dollar value of the agency scope, the length of time, as Russell referenced, and then we will quote that project and that scope based on generally on an hourly rate. But in the last few years, I'm very careful to, like agencies, we identify adds to scope to protect ourselves in the event that circumstances change. So if a review process that from the beginning is laid out to happen in a 12 to 16-week time frame, stretches into month 5 or 6 for client delays, we've built in protections to our master consulting agreement to accommodate that. So it's a fixed project fee with some protections on extensions to projects and adds to scope, which characterize most of the review work that we do.
I think you get a lot of head nodding on the call here, Lorraine, based upon the audience and the scope creep that agencies also feel.
Can I add one extra thought to that? For early on, I don't know, I was twinged when the first call came from procurement personnel, but I've since learned to embrace that upfront validation of the project potential as it relates to company sourcing agencies, because, to their credit, the procurement person will definitively know what the scope of work that the agency is being hired for, and they generally are very clear on what the dollar opportunity for the agency and what the selection criteria will be, and they're very, very process-oriented. So it adds a lot of clarity up front to our, starting point for a project, in contrast to getting a call from a senior marketing leader who may just, quote, want to review agencies to look around and compare resources or solicit new ideas. So in some respects, the procurement-led agency review is a very concrete initiative that's been, blessed internally within the client company, and they're going to do this. So it's a matter of, for us, showing the value add that engaging a consultant to work collaboratively with procurement people to get that body of work done for them.
So what I'm hearing there, Lorraine, is potentially painful in the beginning, but a sure thing.
Yes, absolutely. They're
so
very, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This call's all about you guys. Okay, so a little bit, I guess, to your point, Lorraine, that procurement's been one of the things that certainly in the industry has changed over the last 5 years, and continues to be one of those driving factors that all agencies on this call, I'm sure, and as you guys have well discussed as well, that this is something that's here to stay. Russell, how do you envisage the role of a search consultant changing in the years ahead? I mean, you already mentioned that 60% of your business is outside of traditional search. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the direction of the area of what was traditionally known as search consultants?
Yeah. I may be an outlier in this regard, but I feel that so much agency search uses a model that started in the late 80s, 90s, and it's sort of confusing for me because everything else in marketing has changed, and why hasn't search changed at all? So I do see the role of just endlessly looking for new agencies. I think it's changing a lot because marketers are changing, and in fact, I would argue that marketers are controlling their destiny to a degree that they never did before, and a lot of them are questioning, what is the value of an agency? We're seeing a lot more project work I talked about. So I think just presiding over, old-fashioned, very expensive, very time-consuming searches is probably, past its height and on the downside of the curve now. I think again, I can't speak for everybody, we've chosen to take a much more consultative approach to clients because at the end of the day, just running a search process is something they can do. Procurement does a very good job of that. They don't have the insights we do. They don't meet, and they don't have materials for hundreds of agencies. But I see the role of search continuing to reduce. You take a look at the number of searches, and I believe I'm correct in stating that it's gone down quite a bit. And if 2015 is any kind of indicator, I think it is new business is not great this year.
New business for consultants, or new business for agencies?
For agencies. I mean, I just, I know there's, we look at the statistics. There's not a lot of those big, giant searches going on, and just judging by the amount of inquiries we get, I don't think 2015 is shaping up so far in Q1 to be a great year for new business for agencies.
Lorraine, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Russell that the nature of what clients are looking for has evolved and changed, but I also think that there's a tremendous amount of business to be had, if you will, because middle market companies, well, virtually any kind of organization or institution or company has communication needs, and with digital and social media, there's this new burden for how they communicate and how they take their brand to market. And so clients are wrestling with what kind of capability and competencies do we need to have inside, how do we hire for our social digital marketing manager, or do we outsource to, I'm going to use the word agencies broadly, in market to get those competencies, and what is the, the pros and cons of doing that. So a shorter way to say it is there's a lot of demand for, I don't like necessarily the word project because it seems small, but I'm going to say scope-driven resourcing, where companies of all types and sizes are going in market and trying to identify talent and secure those resources to achieve business outcomes. So it's very active and robust. The difference to me is that all clients generally have a multi-agency roster environment. Very few companies have one agency relationship, or they don't talk in terms of my agency of record anymore. They embrace the notion that they're going to have a roster of pre-qualified, vetted agency suppliers, media companies, ad tech firms, and engage them selectively on scope-specific initiatives that can be very robust and multi-million dollars. And the role of the CMO, if you will, is the orchestrator of both internal resources and external resources of all types and sizes and shapes. And they relish that and they embrace that, and that's what they see their job to be. So it's just different, a different dynamic, but how an agency of any size or capability goes to market and participates in that is directly related to how clearly that agency is positioned and what its competitive strengths are. So I don't want to digress into a new topic, but that's kind of my summary of the change in the last 5 years.
Well, thank you, Lorraine. I think that certainly from our perspective in monitoring the relationship changes across the industry, I would have to say that we certainly haven't seen a slowdown in the number of changes. Where we've actually seen an increase is to your earlier point, the continuing expansion of agency relationships based on scope-driven resourcing. I think that's a really good turn of phrase that you've used there. Less of those large, what we see is less of those large AOR-type relationships shifting in Q1 of this year. Many reasons for that: a stable global economy, if we're tracking it on a global level, especially in the U.S. It seems to be the year of getting things actually up and off the ground. But on the project side, or to your point, the scope-driven resourcing, we're seeing a lot more expansion of those agency relationships. So I think to both of your points, they certainly resonate with us and the research that we do.
I think the reason why, Dave, is I think Russell and I both bring a client-centric perspective to the advertising agency industry. Not that many ad people haven't had a tour of duty on the client side as well, but the underlying reason is that clients are, at the heart of it, very risk-adverse. So even 5 to 10 years ago, the notion of moving all your eggs in one basket to another was a high-risk proposition. And now it is of lesser risk for even a large global or national advertiser to go into market and do a scope-driven resourcing project to source new providers. They add them to the roster right away, but they can engage them against the scope of work. In theory, the agency is successful delivering on that scope of work. They build relationships internally, they build credibility, and then they participate in the budgeting process that client moves through late in the year. So they're in position, if you will, having been vetted and approved by procurement and risk management and legal, and they're active in the AP system, and lo and behold, that client will start to swing more fee dollars to the agency that's on the roster and working effectively. So it's a little tricky because we may go into market today with a scope of work that's, quote, project specific, but it's truly the foot in the door. And I would encourage agencies listening to take any of those opportunities to prove yourself and get on a client roster as the means to be in position to receive future work, greater fee opportunity, and really build the trusted relationships that precede the big opportunities.
A really great point, and I think on that side of things, there's some really good advice which sort of segues into our next area of your respective roles in relation to how to work with agency search consultants from an agency perspective. So, Russell, I'll start with you in terms of there's a number of questions that have come in online, so I'll sort of put these together. Talking a little bit about perhaps the type of work that you do and how that would reflect on which agencies make sense to be on your radar, and then Lorraine, I'll hand the same question over to you, because I know from working with you both that there's potentially quite a difference in the types of agencies that would be appropriate to establish a relationship with.
Okay. So my response is, one of the problems is that, again, in our client discovery process, we let their needs and everything from, desired size and skill set define the long list. We tend to have larger clients, although not always, but one of the problems with a larger client is that they're going to want to see work on your roster for similar large clients unless you're doing really innovative work. And we always get this question from the smaller agencies, just give us a shot, just let us in here. The reality is, if you're doing a project or something for a client with a multi-billion-dollar budget, and you may have some big brands on your roster, but they're the local affiliates, they're going to want to say no. They feel it's a bit of a risk there, and we agree. We think anybody in the world is capable of doing anything, but there's a sophistication level dealing with these very large clients, understanding, working with procurement, understanding, working with big brands. So we don't take the stance that, gosh, we'd like to get everybody in here. We want to see not just your experience, but your experience with similar sized clients. And I know it's hard for small agencies. How do you get the experience if you don't have it there? And that's really difficult to do. But we really, we take some risks because we're taking these small long lists, and the client is looking to us to be the decider. And we've just seen many times, I've led agencies I've never heard of and who had some promising work, but just lack the sophistication level. So there's a number of criteria that we look at to include you in a long list, and we just do not want to make these extensive long lists because it's difficult for us to get our hands around these big lists, and it's difficult for the clients. Dave, throw it back to you.
Russell, could you just provide a little bit more detail on how you would define maybe a small, medium, large agency? I've noticed that's a little different across different consultancies, so I'd be curious as to your definition.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple. Well, typically in terms of, we look at either billings or revenue. We can look at either one, but typically in billings, which are becoming less and less, relevant in today's multi-channel world. But to us, a small agency is really, under $100 million in revenue or in billings, and maybe $10 million in revenue, and in less than 75 people or so. There are times when we're looking for small agencies, but it's generally not in an AOR assignment. And then a medium-sized agency is probably, in terms of billings, between 100 to maybe 250, 300 million, and a large agency would be somebody over that and have multiple offices. So, I know everybody throws the term small agency around interchangeably, and it's one of the things to everybody in the audience you should check with the consultants to see who do you primarily work with, because one of the things that I think agencies fail to realize is that it costs money to hire a consultant. What you don't probably realize is it's the larger clients that have the money to hire a consultant. So just consultant-led reviews tend to gravitate towards the larger opportunities, not the smaller ones.
Mitigating the risk.
Exactly. And we have no problem with putting, Lucky Strike Extra. The definition of who a small agency has changed. 20 years ago, a small agency was defined by people, but today you can have, look at Thai Montague and Rosemary. They've got Co, and it's a little agency that's 20 people, but some of the foremost marketing people in the country. So, again, I'm very, circumspect when I talk about a small agency. It all depends about your credentials and capabilities. My message to you is, if you're a small agency, you're a regional agency, you're doing work for regional clients, or it could be big brands, but sort of the regional outpost, we do consider that sort of small.
Thank you, Russell.
In the
Lorraine,
small camp.
Back to you, Lorraine, in terms of the types of agencies that you're most likely working with and so forth to bring the audience up to speed on your practice.
Well, I agree with Russell in some respects that I'll go back to the clarity of how an agency, irrespective of size, is positioned in market with credibility and proof points as to that capability claim is probably more important than size, except in very large, sophisticated reviews where there is, a necessary critical mass, except sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, sources when a large advertiser has 25 agencies on its roster, yet doesn't have its needs met. It's going to hire a consultant to go in market and identify a competitively superior resource that, I don't like the word specialty, but well-targeted resource. So I'll go back to my example right now. We're active in the bridal category. In this particular scope-driven resourcing project, does it matter if an agency that developed work in the bridal segment and with a creative in the scope with a certain aesthetic and visual design is a 50-person agency or a 300-person agency? That's not the driver in this particular review. Our ability to efficiently go source those agencies in market gets back to the idea of how well an agency is positioned, how its website reflects that positioning, if the agency is registered on industry databases and filled out the profiles and the keywords that would allow us to find them, and then they, differentiate and rise to the surface and align with the very specific scope that we're looking for. So I hate to be long-winded in my answers. I'm not a short answer person, so I apologize. But certainly we're more active in what I would call middle market, regional reviews, scope-specific sourcing. So I'm interested in understanding all those choices in market, but to be efficient at doing it, we would encourage agencies to, it sounds like, make work research early in our processes when we're building long lists, if you will, and filtering all the choices in market. But the key point in building, as Russell said, in building those long lists is that we're often challenged within client environments to build the case as to why a particular agency is being recommended to either receive an RFP or for a client team to get on a plane and go visit them in market, or to engage them to share strategic work that informs a tight proposal. So in building the case, we need to identify those agencies the client will perceive as competitively superior. And I have a lot of respect for agency people. I totally understand that most of them are capable if given the chance to do work, because everybody has had a diversity of experiences and is quite skilled at a certain point in life. But a client doesn't pick an agency for that potential. A risk-adverse client world wants to get introduced to agencies that are clearly positioned, competitively best of class at whatever, XYZ, and has credible proof points that basically increase their confidence level that if they engage that resource, they're going to get what they bargained for. So that's my long answer. I apologize.
And Lorraine, I just have to agree with you because, clients are basically putting their job on the line in an agency search. And when you say, hey, just try us once, just keep in mind, put yourself in their shoes. Are you good enough for them to risk their job?
Right, and to bring you into a position for very, I would call it serious, high-stake projects, clients will hire a consultant, by and large, a generality, most consultants, to do the upfront vetting and accelerate their search process to a point, right? Much like what an executive recruiter does in finding candidates for a job description and then producing a set of resumes or slate of candidates. Then there's a marked line where a percent, consultants like Russell and like myself and very strategic people continue to be engaged by that client organization to vet those pre-qualified agencies at a higher level. And that's where you're given strategic briefs and you'll take a client team to meet with an agency on site at the agency and you'll discuss business issues and my earlier point about organizational fit and the cultural dynamic and the beginning of teaming becomes apparent, and it's a very experience-based way that clients can that engaging agency XYZ and directing X million dollars towards that relationship to immediately activate and produce a body of work that, as Russell said, they're on point to deliver internally is a whole different thing. It's almost like then the search consultant functions like an architect, right? And you're building the brand house that the client and agency is going to move into.
Well, I think certainly some very valid points there in terms of clarifying the perspective that you guys are able to bring to the agencies on the call today. Lorraine and Russell, you both mentioned databases that you use for creating your lists. There's been a number of questions that have been submitted online, as you might imagine, for how do I get on these databases? So could you spend just a minute or so elaborating a little bit on some of the resources that you use? And I think that would be greatly valuable to the audience here.
Sure, and I would just say I think most established search consultants, if you go to their websites, have some pretty clear information needs or ways that they ask that you submit capability material. Or in our case, if you go to rcgconsulting.com, there's a menu bar for agencies and there's an online registration process. It's pretty straightforward and it's a lot of actual information, but we do have open-ended questions about agency culture and leadership and, some things that maybe aren't asked in registering on the 4A's database. The list, the sponsor of the webinar, has a database that we access and search in doing upfront work on reviews. And then we go to certain vertical specific resources, especially in retail, and monitor, even sometimes look at awards within vertical categories to see what agencies are active in achieving business outcomes for clients of a certain type. So our own database, 4A's, the list, I think adform.com occasionally. Russell, you probably have others you used.
Yeah, I mean, what we did, rather than force you all out there in audience land to register on yet another proprietary database, we made a deal with the list many years ago where you just go to our website and you click on the link and you get entered into the list, which we found to be very helpful. The other thing we do, there's a number of lists. Again, our practice last year, 70% of it had a international or global focus, but there's a number of resources we use. One of the things we really like, though, is we've got creds decks and copies of work that we keep for agencies, and send us your stuff in digital form. That's really quite helpful because there's nothing better. It's one nice thing to understand where you're located and who your clients are and what your key capabilities are, but there's nothing like looking at a creds deck. And incredulously, I had an agency the other day who wanted to come down and meet with me, and I said, just really busy. We're getting upwards of 100 requests a week. Can you send me a creds deck? And he says, oh, we have a really difficult time explaining who we are in writing. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I would never put your agency in a review if you can't. But we love, in digital format, we've got a special server. We love, send it to us. We can't guarantee we're going to get back to you. We don't have time to comment, but that's how we do it.
Russell, you and I have had conversations over the years of being able to provide a one-pager in addition to a credentials deck. Almost the when to consider us, and sometimes even a little easier for you guys, when not to consider us. So do not consider this agency if these criteria are met. Is that still something that you're enjoying, being able to receive from those agencies?
It's an exercise in reduction. It's a humbling experience, but it's so great when an agency can express itself on one page, what you're positioning, who are your clients, how many people do you have. It's just a great resource because a lot of times in our process we'll be discussing agencies without any what everybody says. I'm finding it very difficult today to figure out what do agencies do for a living. They've all got, they spend so much time with these really cool positionings. I have no idea what most of you do. And I'm going to throw in one more free tip. Don't ever on your website, the worst thing in the world is to have an anonymous, send it to new business at XYZ agency. I'm a big marketer, and I'm going to send a confidential email to somebody I don't even know on your website. New business is very intimate. Put a contact person or a phone number. Don't just leave it up to a new business email address. End of sermon.
I think, can I add something, Dave? I would think, I know a number of smaller agencies called in to listen today. I do think a singular key fact sheet that is available on the website, downloadable, is a basic and affordable snapshot of what the agency is all about. So that's a
great idea.
They can't all have the same tools in the toolbox that larger, deeply resourced agencies with new business development departments have, but the one-page key fact sheet with clarity on competitive strengths and capabilities, proof points, current client lists. That's a beautiful thing.
I think really good points there, guys, and certainly something that we're on the front end of the tip of the spear on in terms of being asked the same questions. I'm just going to jump to a question that was submitted through the session here. Does the term, a little bit about positioning, I guess, does the term advertising agency pigeonhole agencies as too traditional in the current media and technology climate?
Without a doubt. It says old-fashioned to me. I think the 4A's should change its name to the American Association of Marketing Agencies.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a percent of clients that still use the nomenclature advertising agency, especially those in the procurement world. They're still getting their feet wet on what Marcom suppliers do and the diversity among them. I don't disagree with Russell, but I think advertising agency is the starting point, and it begs further definition in the specific portfolio of services that firm provides and where on the spectrum it falls in its true capability. But I don't think it's a completely outdated word from a client perspective. Manufacturing-oriented companies, it's a very accepted term, or ad agencies, or ad agency roster, or service companies. So clients use the word that way.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, just for 1 minute perhaps, to dig a level deeper on that. Any terms, phrases, descriptors that really ring hollow to you guys? I mean, things that are turn-offs not just to consultants but to the client. What are some of the buzzwords that we should kill?
Gosh, where do we start? I know marketing is all about experiences, but the fact that you're an experience agency really gives me no understanding of what kind of experiences you do. Let's start with that one. Lorraine?
I think it's again a matter of layering definition quickly to add clarity to what your offering is in market. So when you start with full service integrated marketing communication agency, table stakes, there's thousands of them. It quickly has to, think about legs on a table, it quickly has to be built out with that specializes in health, healthcare, and pharmaceuticals, or travel and tourism, and sponsors proprietary studies in consumer research on Instagram and e-commerce, or whatever it is, and the offering, if you will, is fleshed out with increasingly competitive points of difference around capabilities. And it doesn't mean that for the mid-market and smaller agencies that you don't continue to service the community hospital or regional bank on your roster or all the nonprofits that you do project work for. It just means that you go to market with clarity on, especially among targets, defined targets that you've proactively identified, with a clear statement of your business offering and with definition around portfolio of services, competitive strengths, proprietary products, services, capabilities, talents, strategic alliances. Then for me, and this is what starts to separate choices in market, if an agency is adept at developing a narrative around its brand that infuses that offering with its organizational culture and its core values and its mission and purpose and why in the world it was founded and why, you know, those people get up and go and do that job every day, then you start to get the flavor for what makes this agency unique and special and the talent that exists within it. And that's a very cool thing. And then for us, we say, aha, that group will align with this client organization in a really powerful way. So that's kind of how we layer up from the very basic information to those differentiators that serve to inform an agency brand among a sea of choices.
And don't get lost in the overly creative language, you know, just something basic, descriptive. I met an agency in Brazil last year, and I thought this was one of the best positionings I'd ever heard. He's a world-famous creative guy that worked at the agency DM9 down there, and he said, we're a local agency that services global brands coming to Brazil. And I thought, wow, what a great, piercing observation. You don't need this overly flowery, creative wording. Just give us an idea. You're a regional agency that specializes in this or that. That's the kind of descriptions that I like because I understand who you are and what you do.
Great point, Russell. I think certainly an area for further review. I've got one of the questions here that I want to jump to in respect to timing as well. We've got a lot of agencies with digital capabilities, significant digital capabilities, as well as full-service digital agencies. Interested to learn a little bit about how you guys are seeing trends evolve in terms of the CIO or CTO being involved in searches and agency optimization type engagements rather than just CMOs, which is historically the key target for many on this call.
I think if I could speak first, it kind of goes back to that issue that I mentioned earlier that clients are facing. What competencies and capabilities do we want to recruit and build in-house and do ourselves? And then what is the gain for us if we outsource and acquire that capability externally? Does it accelerate our development toward, a vision and whatever, building an e-commerce site for the brand or something? Clients in that space tend to sort resources around strategy, digital creative output, production, and measurement. So those are kind of, just off the top of my head, 4 buckets that I hear clients sorting suppliers as to the capability that they bring to the table.
And I think that most corporations are just not set up for this world. You know, I'll give you an example of a client came to us who wanted to do a website review, but the CMS, the system that ran their website, needed to be fixed. But IT was given the RFP to find the appropriate CMS provider, and I said, this is crazy. You're going to be doing something with IT specs that talks about uptime, yet the marketing people are going to have no input on the content management system that this is your new site's going to use. So you need this cross-functional expertise that goes across departments. IT, the CTO is much more of a strategist these days. They're not necessarily down in the weeds with the IT people, but it's a huge problem. Most companies are just not set up to attack this appropriately.
That's why I think that procurement function does come front and center on behalf of the different stakeholders that exist within the company. And then their job is to go source those resource suppliers.
Okay, guys, we're going to shift gears a little bit here in the essence of time. What I'd like to do is focus on a couple of key outputs for the audience here. Russell, I'll put the first question to you. In terms of taking control of an agency's destiny, certainly there seems to be, warrant the requirement for great positioning, to your earlier point, and but it seems that there's more than that. It's rather than waiting for their email box to go ding with an RFI or an RFP from you guys, procurement, or from a marketing group directly. What are a couple of the key takeaways that you would advise agencies to do to take control of their destiny?
The first thing I'd say is you got to have a good work product. You just can't have crap and expect somebody to say, oh, I love that. So, I mean, there's agencies that work for clients who don't know anything about marketing and really are sort of a hired kind of, production gun. So you got to have a good work product, number one. And number two, excuse me, I'd have to say, is that I am not a fan of clients or of agencies that just email boilerplate stuff to clients. When we do a search, a client always has a file of previous communications from agencies, which I find fascinating. And the ones they always keep are the ones that have really taken a customized approach to their business. Clearly wasn't boilerplate, hi, you're in the whatever industry, we know you're being threatened like ever before. And just from 16 years of clients showing me those letters, what I would say, based on what clients think sticks in their brain, are some degree of a personalized approach, talking about a client's, actual problems versus boilerplate. That really works well from my experience.
Russell, just to add on to that, certainly resource and time constraints. If you're an agency sitting on this call, what is the amount of effort that you would put into working the search consultant angle versus more of the customized approach to clients direct?
First of all, the vast majority of searches done in the United States are conducted by clients, probably upwards of 80 to 85%. So if you're a statistical person, you would understand that, do you want to put your money in the 15% or the 85%? The second point is that you should really be, if you're a small agency that's really doing regional work, and it could be, I'm sure it's very fine work, but if you're not working with big brands, search consultants tend not to work with smaller agencies that are not doing work that's getting on the, awareness of Creativity Magazine, Ad Age, et cetera. So people tell you search consultants are a great source of new business. If you're a small agency, we're just not. We're just not working with the clientele, and I think, it's nice. We'll be happy to take your materials because, there may be that, 1 to 5% of the time when we need an agency like yours, but the majority of the time, we're not looking for really small agencies, and that's the honest-to-goodness truth.
So play smart and work the statistics.
Yeah.
Lorraine.
Hello?
Lorraine, hi. Some advice for key takeaways for what what does work from your perspective for agency business development?
Outside the search consultant channel, I would say a holistic approach, and this applies to an agency of one or an agency of 1,000, to move through very disciplined business basics. You move through a solid plan, a solid position of what you're going to do in market, and then a promotion module, very proactive and intentional, just like you do for your clients. And then there are best practices around what I'll call pitching and activation when you are in a competitive review. And then I think there's a whole pillar around prospering with current clients and organic growth. So I'm big on that holistic, comprehensive plan, position, promote, pitch, prosper with current clients, and you will grow from a position of competitive strength, build reputation, build credibility, build relationships, and it aggregates up in critical mass for bigger and bigger opportunity. I think a way to think about search consultants is they're certainly an influencer in market, active in the industry, so it doesn't hurt to establish awareness among those in your vertical or your region. And then beyond that, I think agencies need to be very disciplined in proactively targeting prospects where they have a strong story to tell. And that's driven from usually relevant industry experience and achieving business outcomes for current clients and growing off of that. So that's, I feel pressed for time, but that's my summary.
Well, to elaborate a little bit just for a moment on that, what I'm hearing from both of you guys is that in the same way that a client takes a more calculated approach to finding an agency, as do search consultants in that process, agencies should take the same type of approach in being much more selective in who they put on their target list for potential clients that they want to provide a customized approach to, rather than just the shotgun approach. So certainly much more of a sniper approach than casting a wide net.
I agree, and the fundamental reason is if any kind of review, for lack of a better word, that's driven from a client organization or a procurement function or a search consultant, by definition is going to be competitive. So like-kinded agencies are going to go through the process and be aggregated in a set of choices for the client. So in that context, don't try to get yourself into an environment where you're not playing to your competitive strength, because it takes deep resources to go the distance and necessarily win in a competitive review. It can be equally productive for agencies to chart their own course to targeted industries or companies with cultures that they think they would work well with, or strategic issues where a company's in a certain life stage, and if the agency is intentional in prospecting among those targets where what they have to offer resonates, then I think that their new business development efforts will be especially productive.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. In respect of time, I'm just going to jump to a couple of things here for those who have to jump off the call. Some resources that I've put up on here on screen, obviously the list and Daily Vista. Lorraine's consulting practice, rcgconsulting.com, and some of the positioning, agency positioning materials and workshops that are available through lockhartpartners.com, as well as External View, ext-viewgroup.com. I'm also putting up on screen for those who have to leave contact information for myself, Lorraine, and Russell. And there's a couple of other questions that have rolled through that I want to make sure that we get to. So if you're able to stick around, great. If not, we will be providing a recorded version of this session via an email link in the next 24 hours. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you so much for participating. So just with that, guys, I know that there were a couple of other areas. Russell, you had just, I heard you just wanted to chime in there for a moment, so please take the floor.
I forgot what I wanted to chime in on. It was something very important, though. It was, I'm sure.
Well, one of the questions here that was asked that I wanted to get to was certainly in respect to the issue of getting materials to you guys. There's still a lot of questions coming through on what's the best way. Really, it boils down to what's the best way to get onto a search consultant's radar. So I wanted to make sure that we answered that in as concise way as possible. I think you've done a great job, guys, of both explaining that. But if you could just recap that one, that'd be great.
Yeah, can I jump in here for a minute, because we are getting upwards of 100 inquiries a week in Q1 of 2015. So it's March. So multiplying, you'll see the numbers. And I don't know if somebody's telling you all, it really wants 15 minutes of our time. We'll multiply 600 people times 15 minutes, and we work for clients. That's how we get our revenue. I could spend all my time talking to agencies, but then unless I win the lottery, I don't have a business model or any income. So rather than having individual discussions about how we work, which we talk about on our website, we would love to get, as we've been talking about throughout today, a fact sheet, a creds deck, and samples of your work. Beyond that, we just don't have the capability to talk with hundreds of people, every week. So that's how you can get, our radar screen is sometimes open and sometimes very closed. It's being a very busy year. So please, I can't spend 15 minutes on the phone with you, but I would love to get your materials, which we do end up looking at. We sort of all get together and look at the materials and see if there's anything notable. At least that's my definition of getting on our radar screen. Lorraine?
For me, just to be direct, if people go to rcgconsulting.com, look at the nav bar, there's information for agencies. You click on that link, and I think it's on the left-hand side, there's a module for agency registration. And it probably takes less than a half an hour. If you profile your agency in that regard, that would be tremendously helpful. If you click around, you will connect to a toolkit that we put together for agencies that pretty much takes all of the things we talked about in 25 years of experience and distills it into materials that we think aids agencies in being more effective in business development. So that's available if people want to access that. Beyond that, for me personally, big news, mergers and acquisitions, if you acquire capability, if you have big client wins that change the game where you have all of a sudden you're going to hire and you leapfrog and have great critical mass as a result of some big win that you've had. Those are noteworthy things to send an email and give us an update. I think if you update your profile twice a year and keep us current, that's wonderful. Always being receptive to a call and quick to respond to inquiries about current client lists, because a lot of times what we do is vet competitive conflicts of interest for clients up front, and that can be challenging at times to get a hold of people and really ascertain if the clients referenced on a website are indeed active and what exactly you're doing for them. So responsiveness is key. Those are some of the highlights.
So what I'm hearing is provide big news twice a year with brevity in a digital format, and be responsive to when you be responsive as you would expect a business development person to be. And Russell, going all the way back to one of your earlier points, make sure that there's a new business development contact on your agency's website.
I guess, can I add one more thing, just so we don't seem overly clinical and information-oriented? I mean, I think Russell and I both go to industry events. I do enjoy meeting people. If you go to conferences and you know consultants are going to be there, send an email in advance and come up and introduce yourself and chat. It's a very people-oriented business, and it is wonderful to put a name with a face and have a conversation about what's new at the agency. So that's another venue that's efficient, I think, for agencies interested in growing and in connecting and to show up in those places and make introductions in that regard.
And I would like to add one more thing, too, about why you should, even if you're, despite the fact what I've talked about that, most of our searches tend to be for larger agencies. A lot of times we'll get clients of ours who will say, hey, we don't want to do a search. We just want to have an additional resource. Can you point us in the right direction? And that's when it's handy to say, you know what, I don't know these guys very well, but here's a couple of agencies that meet that criteria you may want to talk to. Now, when people off the street say, can you recommend an agency, we say, no, that's what we do for a living. But for our clients, we get asked a lot about other resources. So even though we may not put you in a formal review, we're always exchanging information with our clients. So there's another reason to at least let us know you exist and give us, you know, some examples of your work product.
So it rolls up to general marketing practices, guys, ironically.
Yes, we all should be very good at it.
Right. Well, thank you so much both. Lorraine, thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to help inform the agency audience today. Russell, likewise. I know you've had a busy travel schedule as well the last several months, so thank you both very much for taking the time to work with the audience here and myself today. Is there any last words of wisdom that you wanted to provide, and then we'll wrap it up and provide the recording to the audience?
From my end, just thank you again for the opportunity, and hello to people that are listening. And I will follow up with some time and visit your site and look through the information that you submitted to the list. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And as always, thank you, Russell. It's always great to chat with you.
And same back at you. And again, thank you, everyone out there. We appreciate the time that you took out of your day to listen to us ramble on, but we do appreciate it. And hopefully, you never know, we may get a chance to work together.
Thank you very much, everyone. And this will conclude the session today. Again, as a reminder, we'll provide a recording of the session, and that'll be within the next 24 hours via email. So thank you once again to all, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.